Well,
So
you make a good point though too. People started caring about this more when it started happening to suburbia,
white people.
and also what you're talking about too that should be said. On top of this is that we had
They're going to be there and they're already a problem. So why don't we try to find a way to take a large percentage of them, get them clean, get them help with mental health, and try to reinvigorate the community again. I don't understand why we just let this happen. But what I do, because there's a lot of money behind it.
yes,
Criminal
yeah.
police departments make, 85% of the arrests are probably drug related.
Yeah, and you've heard like Joe Rogan's made the point for years that you'll look at these cities and they have like something called a homeless coordinator that's making $300,000 a year. They're incentivized not to get rid of their job.
Right.
It's like the administration nightmare.
And that's why nothing will change here, because there's so much money in hunting people, basically.
Yeah.
Because we don't know where to put them.
Yeah.
So we just put them in prison.
And it's easy. It's easy to just kind of discard a person and whatever.
And people will always say,
it's sick. That's what they do.
And people will say to me, why would we legalize drugs? What would that do? Look at Kenston. Right, but let's say we actually started with Kenston and we tried it there and we took all the people that are drug addicts and shooting up on the street and we put them into like a facility and we just tried and started somewhere. And think if everyone got behind it. But most people don't care because they don't deal with it.
It's not in their backyard.
Yes. Someone in middle America doesn't care, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, you make a good point, though, too. People started caring about this more when it started happening to suburbia.
White people.
And also what you're talking about, too, that should be said on top of this is that we had, the biggest cartel right here legalized in America with the Sacklers and the disgusting shit that they did to this country, getting people who never would have been addicted to drugs, addicted to all kinds of drugs because you gave them shit they didn't need at way too high of a dose and lied to them about what you were giving them.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just crazy.
I think that's the sad part about most drug addicts, because if you ask them, none of them chose to become drug addicts.
Yeah.
It was really just you started doing Oxy because you got in a car accident. Before you know it, you're down on Kensington and Somerset and you're buying a $10 bag.
Yep.
And now it's not even drugs anymore. Fentanyl now is just poison. Any drug now is poison, really. So there's so much cut in drugs that
it's insane.
They're not drugs. But that's the big thing about regulating an industry. I remember when gambling was regulated. Gambling went from being in pool halls and back rooms. Now it's a regulated business. We have an oversight committee that runs it to make sure that people are getting paid, casinos are doing things the right way. Think if we had a regulated industry for narcotics where heroin, for instance, without the cut in it and all that, and it's done the right way, people aren't dying on their feet.
It's a really, really tough conversation for a lot of reasons. It's one I struggle with. What I will say is a guy like David Simon, you don't have to agree with all the things he said, but it is absolutely someone you should hear out because, and I don't just say this because I was a fan of the show, but The Wire is one of the most brilliant things ever made.
And look at the show. Actually look at...
It's a documentary with actors.
Yeah. And a lot of the things 20 years ago that they put out there...
Same thing today.
...have come true.
Yes. Yep.
And I think it really should be required viewing for every person
I
in America.
agree 100%.
Because, it's a city that...
Takes place in Baltimore.
Yeah. And you mentioned money, the homeless coordinator. Mm-hmm. Any time you have an incentive or statistic-based business where if you do well, you'll get paid more.
Right.
So you look at how drugs have destroyed policing, right? We see policing where we see all these protests and people are, the stop and frisk and all this different stuff, people running in homes, cops and stuff. Think if we eliminated the drug arrest stuff, the low-level arrests, and we focused police departments on real crime, violent crime. I heard a stat that in the federal prison population, there are 160,000 federal prisoners in America, and 10% are violent offenders.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
So it's where are the violent offenders?
Right.
It's they're on the street. And that's why crime is insane. And now we have it where we don't really prosecute anyone, or we didn't for a while. Maybe it's changing a little bit, but no civilized society can operate like that.
We've operated in such insane pendulums when it comes to, law and crime It's not healthy, and they've shifted so fast back and forth. Even over the last 15 years, I'd say it's probably been like 4 shifts.
We talked about it earlier. It's one extreme or the other.
Yes,
there's no like, hey, let's just focus on getting bad people off the street. It's no, let's arrest everybody or let's arrest nobody or like it's never just. And Simon also talked about like policing, and he did and looked in the show like the people that get promoted are the ones that have the most arrests.
That's right.
So like, and those people that are promoted, let's say 20 years or 30 years ago, they're now sergeants and teaching younger police how to police.
Yes,
which is the wrong way. And then 40 years down the road, we look at all our police and we say, integration did nothing. So it doesn't matter if they're black police officers or white police officers, they're just doing it wrong.
Yep.
And we wonder why all this bad stuff happens. Most cops are so scared to even police now too.
Yes.
Because of like consent decrees and stuff.
Yep.
So like, I don't know how or why people would choose to be a cop nowadays. I've never understood like what's the.
Yeah, you're making a great point because they're kind of burning from both ends of the stick and both ends of the candle in the wrong way. On the one hand, they're afraid to do their job because everything's on video and can be changed, and the context can be changed. And on the other hand, when they do their job, they're incentivized to hit a quota, which means they're going to make mistakes, and there's someone who pays for that in some way, whether it be through a fine or a criminal record, or both. On the other end, and so there's a human cost, and it takes away moral judgment. I always talk about this. Everything is just a downstream effect from some asshole who's got to say that they did this statistic so they can win on a Tuesday in November. And I see it. We've done a lot of podcasts in here talking about the difficulty with the court system and what that incentivizes. Like I had Brian McMonagle in here for episode 115, one of the greatest defense attorneys of all time.
Sure.
And he came from the prosecution side, as many do, to the defense side. And, nicest guy ever. I've known him all my life. Literally one of the most moral people I've ever known. And I always wondered, like, how does he, of all people, deal with the idea, not that he would ever say this, but I'll say this from the outside, deal with the idea that he represents some really guilty people, like a lot of them.
Well,
and he's got to sit up at night about that. So it's like, I was asking him how you do that. And the big part, and he was honest about it and struggled with it, but he's like, you got to put the government to the test. You have to make them do their job. That's why I do it.
One of the things that I've on my social media have championed for is, in a way, every person is innocent until proven guilty. Nowadays, they're not.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.